You are listening to the Pencil and Paper Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Horror Ramblings Podcast, the show about all things horror. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome to, as Stephen would call it, the hallowed house of horror. This is the Horror Ramblings Podcast. You know us, Lester and Stephen, those guys that you may or may not listen to all the way sometimes. We hope you listen. We hope you enjoy the content. We hope you get back to us on things. Anyways, I'm not going to give some big spiel here today. It is one of those days where you feel like the dead. I think everybody slept pretty solid last night. I don't know how the weather is where you're at, Stephen, but it made a change here, and it kicked me in the ass all of yesterday, and I woke up this morning just like, man.
Yeah, it went back to frigid around here. We were getting nice 60, 70 degree weather, and it was like, and back to cold, 20, woo! And it was like, damn you. So it's a tease around here. That's what I hate. Either stick to one thing or another. Don't tease me with better weather so I can go outside and then just be like, nope, taking it away.
You know, the thing that makes me laugh, too, is, Katrina lived here for the longest time and then moved there. And sometimes when you tell me about the weather there, I wonder if she's ever like, man, I tried to get away from the bad weather. Because, I mean, it's crazy. You guys are 6 hours away. And the weather is just, it's so similar to the weather here that it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. I don't like it. It's always during the transitional periods of spring and fall. It cannot make up its mind. Once we get into the thick of it, whether winter or summer, then we get something more consistent. But until then, it's just like, well, maybe this way, maybe that way. I don't know. It's
exactly
aggravating.
Exactly how it is here. The only question, real quick, and I know people are going to be like, why is this the weather podcast all of a sudden? But just a question. In the summertime over there, do you guys get, like, sporadic rain? Does that happen?
Yeah, it's not as, like, right now would be the rainy season. This is when we get the bulk of our rain, and it's going to be storms, tornadoes, all that stuff, which we have not experienced. We've experienced high winds. We've experienced those possibilities of tornadoes, but they've stayed away, and hopefully it will remain that way because everyone in this house, except myself, are terrified. I understand that they're to be terrified of, but what can I do? I know the drills. I know what you got to do, so that's what I do. But everybody else goes into a panic, and I don't like it when tornado warnings start popping up because I'm like, I don't know what to do for them. We need a bunker, a shelter, whatever. But so far, it's been good. So,
yeah, we have tornado warnings normally away from us. We're like one of the highest points in our state, and it seems like tornadoes don't like to come this way. But whenever there's warnings in surrounding areas, if my son hears them, there goes the whole night because he is terrified that a tornado is going to come through and destroy things, and it just drives me crazy. And real quick, speaking of tornadoes, because the way my brain works, I guess this could be considered maybe like a thriller or maybe even a horror movie to some people. They're making another Twister. Did you see that?
I felt like I read something about that, and I just kind of dismissed it. It was like, okay.
Now, the woman's coming back. The main woman, I guess, is coming back.
Helen Hunt?
Yeah, but obviously the gentleman that played opposite her, he passed away.
Bill Paxton.
Yes,
I always want to say Pullman, but it's Paxton. Bill Paxton.
So I'm not sure exactly what they're gonna do, how they're gonna play it off. Maybe they'll make a nod to him. Maybe they'll kill him off like he died in a storm or something. I don't know.
Yeah. But
just all these movies that they're like doing remakes and sequels to them. Like some of them I understand. Other ones I'm like, really? Like I don't quite get that. And one other thing, because I know we're going to kind of discuss some news and stuff like that before we get into the bulk of the show. Another film that for some they might consider it horror, the Jurassic Park series. I don't know if you saw the news. I'm a little bummed out because I love him as an actor, and he's been in a lot of fantastic horror films. Sam Neill just announced that he's been battling stage 3 blood cancer.
Yeah, I read that last night.
Apparently, he's in good spirits about it, and he basically he said, "If I go, I go," because I guess he's pretty, he's just pretty. I don't want to say relaxed, but to a degree, that's all I can come up with. But still, I hope he does get through it. I love him as an actor, and as everyone would say, and I agree, fuck cancer, just fuck it completely.
Sure. No, he's been very zen about it, and I don't know any other way to be, I guess. I mean, I think I want to be like that. I've always talked about that when it comes to death. I want to face it with that kind of confidence where you're just like, it's time. And because right now, I mean, just the thought of it makes, I don't know, just, I don't want to say gives me the willies, but I don't want to die,
Yeah.
For a good reason. I feel like I've got a lot to live for. And when my time is up, I want to have that confidence where it's just like, yeah, I guess it's time.
I always want to be, and I'll tell you this: if I die in weird circumstances, I need you to do this for me.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to time it just right. But there was a comedian that made a joke about it, and I have to do it right before you take your last breath. You look at your family and go, "I buried the treasure," and then you die. So if I don't get to do that, I need you to just call some of my family up and go, "I don't know what Les was talking about. It was like a week before he died. He was talking about he buried the treasure somewhere. He didn't really give me a lot of information. I want to send them on a wild goose chase."
Sounds like fun.
So now on to some more maybe confident and happy stuff here. I know you had a couple news things. I know there was one thing that we both kind of just discussed that we wanted to touch base on, but figured I'd see if there was anything else that you wanted to maybe put out into the universe for the listeners.
Well, I did want to bring this up before we go too far up, I got to keep us back down for a minute while we're here. Another actor who actually has passed, Lance Reddick, that came across yesterday. Big surprise. I think a lot of people would probably know him from John Wick. He really didn't do a lot in the horror realm, but he was in that Resident Evil series on Netflix. I think he was Wesker in that. And then he's done a lot of other... You've seen him. I mean, if you don't know his name, I guarantee you know his face the moment you see it. But more popular on The Wire, Oz, shows like that. But yeah, that was a shock, man. I mean, and I guess it was a shock because, again, the mortality, I look at his age and he's 60, and granted, I'm still a ways away, but then I start thinking, shit, I'm actually not that far away from that as I used to be. So I don't know, it gives me pause because as far as I know, it was natural, and I don't know what his health conditions were. So there could have been some freak thing. I don't know. I could be healthier. I'm overthinking it.
Man, you're freaking me out now, too.
I'm sorry.
Thinking about now, like, it's crazy to really think about it, though. Like, my father's in his 70s. He'll be 75 years old this year. And I stop and I think about it, and I get to thinking about, my age and how old I'm going to be by the time all my kids are, at least grown enough to hopefully be self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. And I'm like mind blown by it because time seems like it's just, I don't know about you, but the weeks feel like they're going by so much faster.
Mm-hmm.
And you wake up and you're just like, what month are we in? I mean, we're already almost done with March. Like, I know it's only the 18th, but we're chugging right along.
Yeah. No, I was watching an old show, or it was like, I had to dig it up, mind you, and it was like Saturday Night Live's 25th anniversary celebration. And I remember I had it recorded on tape somewhere. It's been lost for time, and I found the Internet Archive is a wonderful place. Someone put it up there, so I started watching it just because I wanted to see it again. And there was a bit on there, and they were just talking about, well, when it hits its 50, man, it'll be another great milestone. And then I thought, they're almost there. 2025, that's 50 years. And I was like, holy shit. And it just felt like I was watching that special just the other day. And here we are, almost 25 years later. Has just...
Yeah.
It's insane.
Same thing happens to me with music. Now, keep in mind, I like some older music anyways, because my father, you know, he was a classic rock guy, which at his time it was just rock. It wasn't classic rock, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I listen to music and I'm like, man, I wonder, you know, I wonder when that song came out. I can't remember when that came out. And then I look and it's like, that song came out, you know, 20 years ago. Or I'm like, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
It blows the mind. And even with movies and everything, like, it's crazy how much stuff I love is being called, you know, they're already calling it, like, old and nostalgic. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like, there's kids that are like, what's a flip phone? What's this? What's that? And I'm like, I still remember having a big old box TV. Come on now.
Just think, there's an entire generation out there that has no idea what a rotary phone is. And
Which is...
That used to be our jam, man. You know, even the wireless handhelds, they were like bricks, and you just, that was a thing. That was new technology for us. It felt so amazing because we didn't have to go. They'll never understand that anymore.
It's crazy to think about that. It's just like in the horror movies now, you know, I love when they have cell phone issues.
Mm-hmm.
And because I stop and I think about it, and I'm like, you know, you get into older horror movies, it's just the phones in the house aren't working, and you live out in the middle of the country. Now they've had to change it to where, you know, oh, there's no cell phone service, or there's this
Mm-hmm.
issue or that issue. And I'm like, at least they're changing with the times, you know, to get us where we need to be.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine somebody even having a home phone in a horror film now, because people would be so thrown off by it and just be like, what is that?
There's rare occasions I even hear about a home phone, and even if you do, it's like, I barely use it. Doesn't matter. So
Just a funny little nod to people getting with the times and everything. I do have CDs at my house. We have a CD player in our vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wanted to get a stand for our phones in the car. They make stands now that just go into the CD player.
Okay.
And, you know, we buy it. We're putting it in the car. My wife and I are like chit-chatting about it a little bit. And she's like, it's kind of weird that they would design these. I was like, well, I guess the company's finally figured that nobody's using CDs in their car hardly anymore. Everybody hooks their phones up.
Yeah, that's true.
Just one of those little things. Like, there's a lot of cars that don't even come with them anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Now, you know, speaking of vehicles real quick, here's a random question that always kind of messes with my mind. You think the car in Christine would have been able to change its shape and make itself appear as a newer vehicle? I've always wondered about that.
I don't see why not.
Be an interesting take.
Yeah. I think that would be cool.
Imagine a new Christine and, like, it reverts back to its older form or something. That would be kind of cool.
I could dig it. Yeah.
So, random thought of the day.
Well, I wanted to also mention something, since we want to encourage our audience to participate. Someone participated in a poll,
Oh.
and I'm starting to see a trend. I think most people like to click polls, yes, no's, and whatnot. So I'm gonna try to do my best to have a poll set up every episode. That way, maybe we'll get more engagement that way. Because I guess we're asking a lot of our audience to write out a response as opposed to clicking a yes or no on a poll. But the question was a few episodes back with the Mithrigan unrated episode. And I posed the question on a poll: which version of Megan do you prefer? The theatrical cut or the unrated? And 100% is unrated. So people want that blood and guts and gore, even if it's in small doses.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I can agree with that. I think, with as weird as it sounds, because Chucky's been around for so long, and we've had Annabelle and, you know, characters like that, something about the idea of a killer doll, I think to this day it still sounds kind of cheesy to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you really have to up the violence. You really have to up the gore.
Yeah.
Just to show that they might be a doll, but they're not playing around. So,
Sure.
but that's awesome that somebody answered one of the polls.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I wanted to bring up is I finally got to watch Cocaine Bear. I don't want to talk about it too much since you haven't seen it yet, but
I've basically seen it, I think, because of TikTok, so...
Probably, yeah. Everybody's been sharing tons of stuff about it, and I just wanted to, I wasn't really worried about spoilers or anything about the movie, because, I mean, what are you going to spoil about this fictitious story about a bear on cocaine? I mean, there's really not anything to spoil, other than maybe who survives and all that jazz, but it was a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend it if you're just looking for 90 minutes worth of insanity. That's what you get. Elizabeth Banks did a great job. The entire cast that they had assembled were fantastic. Everybody was just spot on. The one shout out I want to give is to, I'm hoping I'll say his name right, Alden Ehrenreich, who I hate to be like this is the thing that you'll know him from, but most famously, his biggest role to date that I'm aware of would have been Han Solo in the Solo movie. And I felt like he got a lot of crap from that film, being in that film, saying, well, you're not Harrison Ford. Well, of course he's not Harrison Ford, damn it. We understand. But I still felt like he got railroaded in a movie that was not that bad, and he did a fantastic job. He's a great actor. I've seen him in other stuff. And again, in this movie, he delivers. He's just a joy, a fun guy to see. And I highly recommend. I want this guy to actually succeed as an actor. I want to see him blow up. I want to see him get his due, because I feel like he's right there on the cusp. And he just needs that one role to make him pop. And Solo should have done that, but it just didn't happen, which is unfortunate. But no, he was a highlight in the film for me. But again, everybody was just a lot of fun. And I really recommend it if you don't want to pay for it, as I was telling Les. It did show up on streaming, like VOD, this is like 2 weeks after its theatrical premiere.
I was surprised that it was already available.
So give it another 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe 4 at most, but I guarantee it'll be on Peacock before you know it. So if you want to wait, if you've got Peacock, I would say hedge your bets.
Now, I do have one question about Cocaine Bear. Do we get to see Ray Liotta quite a bit, or? I wouldn't say he's a primary character until closer to the end of the film. He's there at the beginning, kind of setting some stuff up, and then comes back around at the end, and then you get a little bit more of him. He's not a big focus until then. Okay.
So
I was really curious about that. Because everybody's like, yeah, we think this might have been one of his last films. And I'm like, I wonder how much he was involved with the film. But even from the beginning, when I saw the first trailer for the movie, I knew it needed to happen.
For the name alone, the concept, you're just sitting there thinking, this is insane, but I want it. And, it's funny because this seems like a movie, like the title alone, if I hadn't known the people involved, I was like, what is this, an asylum film? Because, they did Attack of the Meth Gator. People, that's a topic we're going to cover on this. Not the Meth Gator. I'm talking about asylum in general. And I think we need to have a guest on for that, because I don't know what to say about it. But point being, this sounds like some wild ass B movie that just, shouldn't work. And yet it does on so many levels.
Right.
And I honestly, I think it's because I give credit to Elizabeth Banks. Okay. This is a director I did not expect to be attached to this film. And she understood there's a balancing act here. It's comedy, it's horror. And you've got, we've talked about it here on the show before, comedy and horror. It's a difficult act.
Yeah.
But if you balance it just right, you can make it very scary and intense. But then you have that levity of the humor that kind of comes in. And even at times, there were times, and I hate to say this, I laughed to death. Because of how ridiculous it was. And I'm talking about it was brutal, but I couldn't help but laugh at the way it kind of happened.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad. I think that was all part of it too, trying to see if they could blend the terrifying parts with some comedy. So
I do know that, and I don't know if she's spoken to it, but I know some of the other people involved with the film have talked about she really used her experience on the set of Slither to help her with some of the directing. She thought of some of the things that happened in that film, and she tried to carry some of that feel over to this movie. And Slither is another fantastic movie that I think is slept on a little bit.
And right there, if her inspiration was following James Gunn, that proves right there is how she pulled this off. Because this seems like the type of movie he could pull off. You know, understanding it's that balancing act. And if she took, absolutely. Because like you said, Slither, it's an underappreciated gem, and it's definitely a nice blend of horror and comedy.
Oh yeah, and great cast too.
Yeah,
I mean,
fantastic cast.
You've got Michael Rooker as the main villain in it. Come on, I mean he's just fantastic anyway. So
sure, yeah, I need to rewatch that shit. That's a solid movie. I enjoy the hell out of it too.
Yeah, I kind of found that movie by accident one time, and I was like, sounds good enough. We'll give it a watch.
Sure.
I was glad that we gave it a watch.
Yeah, oh yeah. I can't remember why I stumbled upon it, but it might have been the cast itself where I was looking at it going, it's pretty solid. And then I heard word of mouth. Yeah, it's a shame that's how what it takes sometimes, but I'm at least glad that we did get around to watching it.
Right. Now, speaking of kind of horror comedy, Evil Dead, it's always been sort of associated with horror comedy because it did kind of get to the funny route. The new one, I don't think is so much doing the comedy.
No.
But I do know that something happened at one of the premieres of that. I know you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
I've got some opinions, but I want to get your opinions first. I want to hear what you have to say.
So, to my understanding, this was at South by Southwest. They were screening Evil Dead Rise, which I guess is coming out in a couple of weeks, and they were doing a Q&A afterwards. Had Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, Robert Tapert, pretty much everyone behind the scenes, and I think a few people who were actors, performers. And some guy just decided to be a dick and just be like, movie sucked. Now, I don't know what your mental state has to be that you sat and watched this entire movie just to wait until the end to then take that moment to say the movie sucked in front of a girl. Like, what did you expect to happen? Did you think that you were going to be a hero in that moment? That everybody in the audience was going to be like, yeah, what he said. Dude, absolutely not. Not in front of Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, the guys who created this shit, who own this shit, and you thought you were going to bash their movie? I know they didn't direct it, but understand, as a group, their franchise, their thing. So it makes me wonder, did you know what you were coming into? Are you familiar with the franchise at all? And like, what was your beef that you felt in that moment? I mean, you were there with everybody, and everybody else seemed to be having a good time, but you, what were you thinking? And then obviously he got escorted out. Bruce told him to get the fuck out, and rightfully so. I mean, what? I'm just so confused by it. Like, what was the mindset here? Because he genuinely walked out flipping birds and everything, like he just thought he was gonna be the big guy. Like everybody was gonna be like, yeah. No,
yeah,
dude.
My wife and I watched it. Well, Samantha and I watched it, and we were kind of just paying attention. He's like, the movie fucking sucks, and I love Bruce Campbell just being like, then what are you doing here? Get the fuck out of here.
Right.
Like he shouted out. He made the good point of being like, then why are you even here still?
Yeah.
And after we watched it, Samantha looks at me and she's like, it almost seems like that guy just wanted the attention.
Yeah, that was absolutely my thoughts exactly. It was after his 15 minutes, he thought this was going to be the big deal. He was going to be the hero of the day, saying the one thing that everybody thought or people seem to think is cool to do now, that you just shit on a thing and everybody's like, yeah. I think there's going to be a moment, and I really hope it's soon, where, and I'm starting to think it's starting to happen, is that people are going to get sick and tired of this negative bullshit that people just continue to spew. It's being like, well, this thing, here's why I think it's bad. No one cares why you think it's bad, okay? You can have your opinion all day. Guess what? There are going to be a bunch of people out there who love it. And I don't think you're going to change their mind. So people just need to let it go, man. You know?
Need to lighten up.
Yeah. It's okay to like something and dislike something. If you like something and I don't, it's perfectly fine. It doesn't change anything in this world.
Well,
we can have different opinions.
Well, and to me, it's the same grounds of, people saying that something's offensive and everybody getting up and going, oh, it's offensive, and then everybody jumps on the train. Just because you find something offensive or I find something offensive, that doesn't mean that other people don't find it offensive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fine line, but it's like it's the same thing. People just need to let things go, and they need to lighten up a little bit.
And when to that point, I would even say that if there's a conversation to be had about something offensive, I'm willing to listen because I've had I don't want to get into like details with this because I don't want to set the wrong people off, but there have been some comments that I've heard made, and I've heard them, and I understand people are just like, well, I can't believe someone said that, and then I kind of absorb those comments, and I'm like, I don't understand the problem. Like, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, I don't want to side with the people that are being villainized because clearly something about the statement is offensive. But from where I'm sitting, I'm just like, I don't see the offensive part, so you need to help me understand it. And in that moment, if that's what I'm saying, I need them to help me explain or understand it, not villainize me too because I'm not immediately on your side. I need to understand it so I can be on your side.
Yeah.
But I know that's way off from what we were talking about. But in the sense of this kind of stuff, this is not that conversation to be had. This is just an opinion about a movie.
Yeah.
Has fuck all to do with life.
Yeah. I had that happen to me not too long ago. Actually, the same thing. I thought that something had happened a certain way, and then I looked into it a little bit, and I was like, well, maybe it's not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
So, it does happen. But about the Evil Dead movie, just real quick, from what I've read so far, review-wise, I've heard it's one hell of a wild ride. It's a gore fest. They even make use of a weapon that I think should be used in more horror films, because I have seen it used in one horror film, and it was brutal, and that's a cheese grater.
Ooh.
Yeah. I saw some small studio made a movie. This girl was torturing another girl, and she took a cheese grater to her knee. And they pull away, and you see her knee or what's left of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, on to the next one, and luckily they stop her before she gets to the next one. But apparently this movie takes advantage of that, so much so that there is a picture floating around the actress who plays the mother that gets possessed in the film.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture of her smiling with a little cheese grater. I mean, it's just a little one, and she makes a comment or something about it. But yeah, I'm all for it. When I watch Evil Dead, I'm expecting it to be brutal and gory and, all those, Deadites talking about people sucking cocks in hell and all that fun stuff. So I'm excited for it. And I don't know if you saw, but Bruce Campbell also made some headlines for something else that he said. He said that he was done as Ash Williams, playing Ash Williams in real life. Like, he said he could do an animated series or something like that. But he came out and he said, on the record, he even made it a point. He's like, I'll say this on the record. I would come back in Evil Dead if Sam Raimi came back.
Well, see, I did hear kind of the opposite of that. I heard that Sam Raimi is still attempting to do that. He's like, I want to do at least one more with Bruce as Ash.
Yeah.
And I thought that was him trying to be like, if I can pull it off, I'll get him in there. And
all
so
I know
clearly
is,
they're on the same page. They want this to happen.
I would love to see one more with them. And they said that this new film could set it up to where they could maybe bring him in to some degree. I really miss the TV series that was on. Yeah. And I know Bruce Campbell said that it took a lot out of him. Like, he was struggling, he said. There were a lot of times where he was struggling. And I get it. We hold these people on this pedestal and we think that they're some kind of superhuman, but they're like the rest of us. They're just people.
Yeah.
You know, I think Bruce Campbell's in his late 60s now, I think.
Something like that. He's aged. Yep.
Still kicking it though. You know, I mean, I can't wait till they reveal him as the main Marvel villain in the next movie, because you know that's going to happen.
Wouldn't that be something? Yeah.
Gotta get even with Doctor Strange, you know, for what he did to him. But anyways, I don't know if you had any other news stuff that you wanted to.
Well, when you
maybe put
mentioned
out there.
it, damn, I felt like there was one other thing, because when you were mentioning that last little bit, it reminded me of something, and give me just one little second just to thumb through. Maybe I'll come across
You're
it,
good.
because I just felt like this was worth talking about, but something tells me I'm gonna die. Because I know it felt like it was something that needed to be talked about. Damn it. Something good. Something solid. Come on now. I can find it. It's in here. And you know what? This would be a lot easier if I narrowed it down to horror. That could help. Oh, this is not it, but it's worth mentioning. If you're a video gamer, and I'll probably talk about it on Super Mega Crash, is just kind of a little tidbit. But for those of us who are fans of Troma, and especially Toxic Avenger, there is a Toxic Crusader video game being remastered, like a beat 'em up, like the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games. And I think this was, I don't remember if there was an actual game of this. It took me a second to, I was like, was there a game? I don't remember. But there's a studio that is producing this game. It's coming out, Toxic Crusaders, beat 'em up. Keep your eyes open for that. I'm excited as hell about that. Damn it. I'm gonna, yeah, well, again, not really related to what I'm thinking of, but son of a bitch, I can't help it. I keep finding it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game, which is another thing, got a release date. Very, very spot on. August 18th, 2023. Exactly 50 years to the date of the date in the movie, which is August 18th, 1973. So perfect marketing.
That is awesome.
Joe Bob's coming back in April 21st, I think.
Yeah, I'd seen that.
Last
that they're coming
drive-in.
back.
Yeah, just throwing that out there because I'm trying to kill time
5?
here. Yep, season 5. So I guess whatever I was thinking of is just, I don't remember. My brain just blanked because I can't, none of this is being like, oh yeah, this is the thing. So I'm sorry. I was trying to remember this thing and it's gone. So the hell with it.
It'll come to you midway through the show.
Yeah. And it'll be like, oh, stop the press. Stop the entire conversation. We got to go off on this tangent. Shit. Okay. Well, I tried. Anyway, let's talk about whatever we were going to talk about.
We were going to talk about, was it Critters today?
Yes. Horror comedy. If you kind of wanted to be kind of spot on about it.
One of those.
What would be the theme we've been kind of hitting on.
I call them the Gremlins' evil little cousins because I think they're worse than Gremlins.
Mm-hmm. They're mean little shits, and funny enough, this is one of those franchises that teeters that line of it never really went 100% hardcore R, and it could have, but they never went that far. They kept it right there in the PG-13 realm, and I was really surprised by that if you think about it, because at the time, I mean, PG-13 was fairly new. This was at least 2 years after the fact that it had been instated because of Gremlins and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Those were the two movies that kind of made people say, you know what, I think we need some middle ground here, because R seems too much and PG just doesn't seem appropriate, so we need this middle ground here. And boy, that Hollywood loves PG-13, let me tell you. That's why Megan got a PG-13 rating, because I was like, we need to make money, okay? Do you understand teenagers go to the theater, and we need to get as much bang for the buck? But it has been proven time and again that R-rated movies that are well done can rake in the dough just as easy. It's not impossible. I understand it cuts your audience in half, but people love R-rated movies if you do them right.
And some parents take their kids anyways.
They do. Jesus. The worst experience I ever had, and I won't say it's the movie's fault, it was just, what the hell is wrong with you? Okay, that kind of thing. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Now, if you know who those characters are, you know exactly the type of movie you're getting into. Sitting down in the theater to watch this movie, and then 2 rows in front of me comes in this grandmother and her prepubescent grandson. And within the first 5 minutes, fuck, motherfuck, noise. And the grandmother was like, what are we watching? Oh my God, we gotta go. You know what the grandkid said? Shut up, watch it. I'd have been like, no, dude, snatched his ass up and dragged him out. But no, that's not what happened. Little spoiled brat got his wish and got to sit there the entire movie, as the grandmother was probably just embarrassed to hell to be there. This is what's wrong with today's youth. I know people say don't beat your kids, but I think that kid needed a beating. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I got off on a tangent. No, Critters. That's what we're going to talk about. We want to talk about the franchise of Critters, and it's really not that expansive as much as you'd think. And I honestly feel like this is one of those franchises that gets forgotten because it's not as prominent. But yet, the first one specifically is a very solid movie.
Yes.
And I will argue this all day long. It's not just a great... It teeters this line. It's a sci-fi comedy horror. You know? It hits all these beats, and it does it so well. Because you have... It starts off as a very 80s sci-fi epic. And then when it gets to Earth, we kind of get those... comedy vibes, you know, like backwood farm kind of things and whatnot. And then the horror vibes come in when the critters actually come in, and they never play it for comedy. When they're attacking, they're vicious. Like you said, they're seem a lot more aggressive than something like the Gremlins. Because even as we see Gremlins kind of attacking people, we never actually see them kill them. Yeah. I mean, the critters devour people, you know, to skin and bones. And like I said, I feel like that's where it teeters that line to an R, because they really could have pushed it to an R, and they didn't. So I'm really surprised they kind of held that restraint, and I'm wondering why.
Always, as a weird comparison, the Critters to me always seemed like, and here's where it gets a little funky, a dark version of Killer Clowns from Outer Space meets Gremlins. Like, that's what I always thought the Critters were. Like little creatures that were a combination of those two things.
Sure.
So, I mean, I know, I'm trying to think, there was a big, I think it's Critters, there's a bigger actor who got their start on Critters. I think they were in the film for a very short time.
Well, that depends, because there were a few, that depends on who you're talking about as far as big star. Billy Zane, this would have been one of his earliest films, and whether you consider him a big name today or not, I mean, that's...
I would still consider him pretty big.
I think so, yeah. I mean, dude was in Titanic, for crying out loud. I mean, I feel like he made his mark on being in one of the biggest movies of all time. And one actor who I felt like I love that he's starting to rise in prominence again. Maybe not in a lot of roles that I want to see him in, but Scott Grimes, who was essentially the lead of the film, Brad, the teenage boy, I guess he was kind of getting to teenage. He wasn't quite there. Maybe 12? Would you say?
Probably somewhere in there, yeah.
It feels about right. You know, I mean, this film, and even part 2, which I don't want to step on that one just yet. We'll get to it. But, you know, he was a prominent character for the franchise. I feel like it's kind of his franchise in a way, you know, because when you lose him in part 3 and 4, it just feels like it's missing something. I know we still kind of stick with, what's his name? Come on, brain. He's the other main character. Crying out loud. Charlie. Jesus Christ. Who is his drunk friend. We'll say drunk friend.
Yeah.
He just the town drunk, if you will. But No, Scott Grimes, I mean, I've actually been watching a lot of American Dad lately, and he does the voice of Steve Smith on that show. And you'd never think about it. You'd never know it, just seeing him as a kid. But he can sing. He's a singer. And it blows my mind every time I hear him sing. I'm like, God damn, why hasn't he cut an album or something? Because he can sing. He really, really can. And it's just impressive. And he was also on The Orville with Seth MacFarlane as well. And it was good to see him, again, in the flesh, actually acting again. And I'm sure he's done tons of acting roles, but I haven't seen them. And I just felt like he's been off my radar for a while. So it was nice to see him kind of come back. Yes, underrated. Hope it comes back for a 4th season. And I hear rumors that it might. So fingers crossed. But no, this movie, I guess we'll talk about some of the writers and director. The director, who our audience may actually know some of his work, Stephen Herrick. He directed, if I'm not mistaken, he did not. Okay. He did, as far as big movies that he directed, he's done Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He did The Mighty Ducks, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Disney's Three Musketeers. For some reason, I thought he did a horror movie, but I guess I was wrong. Another horror movie. So that shows you that he does play in the realm of comedy, I guess, a little bit more than
he actually did
horror.
One of my favorite Eddie Murphy movies.
Oh, yeah? Which one?
Holy Man.
Holy Man. Okay, yeah. So, see? There you go. So, I mean, this seemed to be his directorial debut, which is pretty strong outing for a start, And
I would say.
He actually co-wrote the screenplay. But the fascinating part to me is I found out over time that Don Opper, the guy that played Charlie, he actually helped kind of craft some additional content. So I'm curious if he just did that for his character, like if he wrote scenes extra for Charlie, or if his additions to the script were maybe away from Charlie. Maybe he contributed to the Kreitz storyline or any other aspect to it. I'm really curious about that, because he's a fascinating person, Don Opper. Like, he's done a lot of sci-fi projects, and again, I think for a lot of people, this franchise is what he's best associated for, because he played Charlie in all 4 films, and I know that there are more than 4. We'll get to that. But I mean, in all honesty, I can't think of anything else I've seen him in, and I know I have. This is the franchise. This is the thing that people know him for. But he's been in other sci-fi projects, like he's been in Quantum Leap. I know he was an episode of that. I don't know if anyone remembers, since we talked about Bruce Campbell, his show, Briscoe County Jr., he was an episode of that. So, I mean, he's worked steadily. He's just, I don't know, like, I'm not trying to knock the guy. It's just he's all over the place, and I hate that this is the only thing that I remember him from, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it, in a sense, how do I put it? It makes sense, though. I mean, it's almost like comparing him to Michael Gross, who played Burt Gummer. Mm-hmm. I know he's been in other stuff, too, but I know him best from Tremors. Certain actors just get associated with something, and Critters just happen to be his.
For me, what's really interesting about that with Michael Gross is I remember him before Tremors, because he was the dad on Family Ties. That's where I associate him first, and then I'm just like, isn't it cool that the dad from Family Ties became this guy? And see, it's just insane.
The first time I noticed him was from Tremors, so...
Yeah. So it's interesting.
I would look at it the opposite way.
Right.
The guy from Tremors is in Family Ties? What?
Exactly. Weird. He's nothing like that guy. He's a hippie.
Which is crazy. But
yeah, it is. But the story, if you've never seen Critters, how dare you? I guess, we've kind of touched on it already. So to break it down real quick. Essentially what happens is there are these creatures known as Kreitz. And they are in this alien prison facility. They're getting ready for transfer. I guess they're going to go annihilate them or whatever, the alien beings or whatnot in the prison system. And of course, the Krites take this as an opportunity to escape. And they get in a ship and then they take off heading for Earth. And then 2 bounty hunters come and chase them down. They crash land in some... do they really say where they're at? I'm sure they have, but I can't remember the name of the town. I feel like it has a very... Like, if I heard it, I would be like, oh, shit, yeah, of course, that's the name of the town.
Let me see if...
But, yeah, we have internet, people. We know how to look stuff up, and I'm sure they have.
That they show up on their farm.
Yeah, but I feel like there was a... Anyway, it's a Midwestern town, kind of, we'll say, Oklahoma, Kansas, somewhere in there.
Probably somewhere in there like that, yeah.
Maybe. So just backwoods out of nowhere, and I know that's not too backwoodsy, but you get where I'm going with it. And essentially they start, causing havoc in this small little town, and then, of course, the bounty hunters are just on a mission. Let's kill Krites, and... chaos ensues, but it's a lot of fun. It's absolutely a lot of fun. So I highly recommend going to check this out. It should be on some streaming platform out there if you've not seen it. But let's talk about the cast. That's another thing, too. I want to talk about Dee Wallace, who I feel like is just horror royalty at this point.
Yeah.
Because of all the shit she's been in. I mean, we're just talking in horror, but outside. I mean, E.T., or if we're talking like big movies that she's ever been in, but then we go back to horror. She was in The Howling. She was in some of Rob Zombie's horror films. I think she was in Halloween 2 or Halloween.
I think so.
I'm spitballing here. She actually came back for the Critters franchise in Critters Attack, which again we will talk about when we get there. But if you don't know who Dee Wallace is, what the fuck? That's all I can say, because I'm hoping to meet her in a few weeks when the Tattoo and Horror Convention kicks up again, because she's supposed to be there. And if I go for any other reason, it would just be to meet her. You know what I mean?
Oh, she was in Cujo as well.
Cujo, Popcorn, Alligator 2. See, I'm sticking with the horror. Hills Have Eyes. Holy shit, yeah, I forgot. Again, you've seen her. You've seen her. And I can't imagine there's a soul listening to this show right now who's like, I don't know who that is. You know who she is. And and she is the typical, I don't want to say she does nothing good here, but she's the typical mom. And what's funny about that is she does it so well. You know what I mean? Because this was around that time she was doing the mom roles, but she does it in such a way that you love her so much.
Yeah.
And then even in the moments where everything gets crazy, she's just, her intensity, you feel that when she's freaking out, everybody, the chaos is ensuing. Like she elevates it with her intensity, and you're just in it with her, just like, oh my God, don't hurt the poor woman. And you want her to survive. So yeah, she's absolute delight in this film, and I think the film is a lot more, it's stronger for it, because she elevates the entire cast. And then her husband, I laugh every time I see his name, because he's just got the most country ass name I've ever seen. The guy who plays her husband, Jay, Billy Greenbush. Billy Greenbush. That's about as Texan a name as I ever heard. But he plays it well, you know what I mean? He's just he even has the accent, come on now, Brad, what you talking about? You get your ass to school, or I'm on, one of those country ass, I'm gonna skin you and hang your bones out to dry. If that's one of those country ass things to say. But again, we're talking about a guy who's been in like he was in Jason Goes to Hell. He was the sheriff, and he'd been in. I'm sure he's done a lot of other stuff, TV shows that I've never watched. I'm looking at, but I'm just he's been in other stuff that you've seen maybe. Like Jason Goes to Hell.
There is another name that has been in quite a few horror films as well. Mm-hmm. Lynn Shay.
Lynn Shay. Yep.
I mean,
that's another horror royalty. If to be fair, I mean, she's been in, and obviously, this is a New Line production. Of course she's going to be in it.
Of course.
Of course. You know, if you don't know that bit, Rob Shea is her brother who owned New Line, and it just seemed to be like, put her in a movie. Put her in a movie. She's always in a movie. So
She even
$10
plays
you can
Nightmare on Elm
find
Street.
her. She was in. Was she in more than one?
She was in.
I know she was in at least two.
The two that I am thinking of right off the top of my head. She plays a nurse in New Nightmare.
And then she was the teacher in the original.
She might have had a role in one of the other ones that I'm just not thinking of. I mean, even Rob Shea was in some of those films, though.
That's true, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was even in Freddy vs. Jason, actually.
Yeah, he was the principal, and he should have had. I think it was going to have a bigger role, and they cut it.
Yeah.
From what I remember hearing, which it's a shame, but yeah, no, I hate it for him. Well, she was also in Critters 2, so there you go. Look at that.
Yeah. So
I'm just digging around to see what else she's been in. No, she's actually absolutely one of my all-time favorites. Seeing her in movies. I know that this might not be a movie that a lot of people remember, but one of my favorite roles of hers, outside of something like Kingpin, where she just makes my skin crawl in that movie. For obvious reasons, if you've never seen that, oh God, that'll do it for you. But yeah, she was in stuff like Insidious. That was another one that she was well known for. But one of my all-time favorite roles that she ever did was in a movie called Detroit Rock City. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's essentially, if anyone said, "Oh, have you ever seen that Kiss movie?" That's Detroit Rock City, and she was like the overbearing, Kiss is Knights in Satan's service. How dare you, typical mom that hated devil music, if you can even consider Kiss devil music, because it is far from it, in my opinion. But she just plays it to the hilt so well. And I think her performance in that, like, she makes me despise her. But at the same time, I love what she's doing. You know what I mean? So that, to me, is like a perfect performance, because I still love you, but I hate you in this role. But that's what you want me to do.
Yeah.
So she's well-rounded actress who's done so much great work.
And she's the sweetest person when you meet her.
Yeah.
Because you got to meet her, and she's so nice.
Mm-hmm. Who else? Well, Emmett Walsh. I think he was was he the sheriff in this? I feel like he was the sheriff in this.
I feel like he was too.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's a legendary actor who goes way back. I mean, long before our time. And he's just, again, another solid actor. Man's still kicking, too, which, kudos. And
God, he's got to be up there.
Yeah, he, 1935 is when they said he was born. So, I mean, he's coming up on 90 in 2 years. So, he's 88.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying I wish him death. When you kind of reflect on it, it's like, holy shit, man, still kicking today? That's awesome.
Yeah,
good for him. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. But we're going about through the cast and everything. I guess the last one I want to kind of touch on, and then we can just kind of carry these through, is Terrence Mann, who plays. He's not technically Johnny Steele, but he is Johnny Steele. But he plays was it Og? Or no, Og was the one that turns into Charlie. This was, or was it Ugg? Shit, what's his name? No, he is Ugg. Okay, so all right, so I'm getting it confused. I can't remember who the other one was or what they called him. But Ugg is who Terrence Mann plays, but he takes the face of a rock star named Johnny Steele, and he becomes the face of the bounty hunters, and he's just a charming guy. I mean, what can you say? I feel like that was kind of an interesting choice for character, but it works, And he plays it straight, but it works. And I always liked his character in this one and in the second one, but I felt like when they went to 3 and 4, I don't know, they did the character wrong in my opinion, but that's just where I feel about it. But again, we'll get to it. Got to touch on all these benchmarks before we get to the meat of it all. Finally, the one thing I wanted to talk about the most, or the one big thing, since you mentioned Killer Clowns from Outer Space, perfect reflection, because the Kyoto brothers are the ones who designed the critters. So that loops all this shit back around. And you talk about a group of, I guess, would you call them special effects artists? I guess that would be the proper term for them.
Yeah, I believe so.
Their work is just so fascinating to me, and I feel like it gets overlooked from time to time, but when you actually get to see, I mean, when you see all the stuff that they've done and you just kind of really reflect on it, it's like, holy shit, that's just amazing. And I love that they haven't, to my knowledge, that they still work on these little puppeteered designs. They're not copping out to CG. I mean, this is their bread and butter, you know what I'm saying? And they design such amazing creatures from the killer clowns, from the critters, and I'm sure I mean, that's just the baseline of where I'm going. I'm going to go look up their work just to make sure that I'm not forgetting something.
I do know, and it's actually a movie we've talked about before, something that Katrina really loves, Ernest Scared Stupid. They did the effects for that.
That's right.
And if you look at two of the, I think there were trolls in it, if I remember right. If you look at two of the trolls, they're killer clowns without the makeup.
I feel like I remember hearing that. Yeah, that's true.
I think we had talked about that maybe on a previous episode, but yeah.
They helped with a lot of the critter designs. I think throughout most of the films. I don't know how involved they were with the last two, like 3 and 4. So I can't speak to that, but they did art direction on Team America World Police. They did some stop motion stuff for Elf. And so, I mean, they've been around. They've done some solid work. And again, when you look at the designs, especially focused on critters and the killer clowns, I mean, it's just like, goddamn, why weren't they getting more work at the time? And why aren't they getting more work today? Because I understand CG's the way to go, baby, but their work is just so well crafted.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at it, it's just so unique in design. And even for puppets, they work on so many levels that it's just like they have a life of their own.
Yeah, and I mean, the studios today, too, they've started to go back to using more practical effects. They're starting to do practical mixed with CGI, which is even better, works even more successful. So it's not like they couldn't find the work, because they are good at what they do.
Yeah.
There's a movie called Come Play, I believe is what it's called. It's a horror film that came out maybe a year or two ago. And the creature in that, for some reason I thought the creature in that was CGI. They actually built a giant puppet of the thing.
Oh, wow.
And there's scenes where they do some CGI on it, but they use a puppet for it. That way the younger performers had something to look at. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Absolutely. So with the film itself, I guess I want to just talk about the everything about it. I mean, we've kind of touched on the base outside, behind the scenes stuff, but the story itself. Like, how long has it been since you watched Critters, like the original Critters?
It's been a few years.
Been a few years? No, that's fine. I mean, it was one of those that I got a kick on not long ago, but it's always kind of been there, Like, I've had a DVD of it for some time, and I probably got it in some bargain bin somewhere, just happened to see it. Was like, holy shit, Critters, I haven't seen that in forever, and snatched it up. And then I've always kind of held on to it because I never knew if I'd ever see it come on, because it just never felt like it was available. Yeah. And then suddenly I started seeing the others pop up, 3 and 4, and then I was like, man, I hadn't seen 2 in a while, and that was always another one that I'd remember. And then finally I found it, and I bought it digitally because I was like, screw it, I can never seem to find it on disc. But there are discs out there. I think, I want to say Shout Factory did a Blu-ray set of all 4. And, I mean, it's available. I could buy it, but I'm in this, I've hit this impasse with discs where I've been trying to transition to 4K, so I'm hesitant to buy any Blu-ray because I'm just afraid they're going to come right back around and be like, hey, guess what we're doing? We're putting out a 4K version. It's like, son of a bitch, I just bought this because it's happened to me. So I've been very hesitant to pick up that set, but they're out there. I know that they're on HBO Max at one point, all 4 of them. So I kind of did like a watch through, went through 1 through 4. And you can see where the quality declines. And I hate to say that, but it's true. And I give them credit for continuing a plot thread, because when you get to some of the later ones, they could have just been like, the hell, the other films don't matter. But they didn't, so I appreciated that. But with this one holds a special place in my heart because I felt like it goes back to my childhood. You know, I probably saw this when I was 6 or 7, and it was horror enough that it didn't, I mean, I guess there were just terrifying things about it, but I never felt afraid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I was a little bit more fascinated with it, kind of like with Gremlins. You know, it was light enough that it wasn't terrifying. And then I saw the critters, and I knew I'm not, you know, I wasn't like a dense kid thinking, oh my God, they're real. But it was the design of them. I think somewhere in the back of my head, I was just looking at it going, these are fascinating to me. I want to see more of this, you know, because of everything it is. So I was always excited to watch the film. I had cousins that had it recorded, and I think on a tape somewhere, and that's where I kind of watched it. So I remember watching this quite a bit as a kid, and there was just, I don't know, it just, the story, the way it paces out, everything about it, I always enjoyed it. And even to this day, when I watch it again, it's still solid.
Yeah.
You know, there might be weak points to it, but I couldn't tell you what they are, because I just see how well paced it is, that it hits the right beats, and it's just a fascinating original tale if you think about it. Because I can't think of another film. I know we can say Gremlins, or even to some degree, like you said, Killer Clowns, with those simple little elements. Is you're taking, okay, well, space aliens come to Earth, but they don't want to be clowns. We'll say they're like gremlins, but we can't use gremlins, so some amalgamation of something like that. Make them look like, the Tasmanian devil, and then there you go, boom. We got it. But beyond that, you have bounty hunters coming after them. They're being hunted. These things that seem like they're not very intelligent creatures are highly intelligent.
Yeah.
And they are a threat to the universe, according to the prison guards and whatnot, where we saw them held captive. So they're a danger. They're a threat. They wind up in this town. And then you get something about Charlie. That's another thing about that character, is he's so charming and fascinating because you're rooting for him. You know, I know he seems like a failure and a drunk, and he just seems like he's not right. But then there's just something about him. You root for him. You want him to succeed because he's trying to warn everybody, because he has the alien. He's that guy that it's always talking about. Well, they're coming for us. I feel it. You know, it's coming. I think there was a line. And it always cracks me up. He comes running in because he saw the spaceship fly over his head, and then he's just trucking it to the sheriff's office, and he's just like, he bursts in. He's like, they're here. It's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, them, who? Them, my teeth, the aliens, because he always felt like the tingle in his teeth or something, mm-hmm. And that was like the silliness to it, but it was just how he said that, them, my teeth. So. No, Charlie was just one of those fascinating characters, and again, like I said, all the cast themselves, they work to their strengths, and everyone is so well cast, and the pacing, it never feels like it's stretched out. There never feels like there's a weak moment in the film. I really recommend this film to anybody who's never seen it, because I feel like it's such a strong entry a strong beginning. To a franchise, and still holds up to this day. I honestly cannot think of a single weak link. Yeah, and maybe it's just nostalgia talking, but that's just me.
I feel like they were self-aware, and when films are self-aware of what they are, that makes for a better film, because they understand that they don't need to tell some huge epic story. They just need to get the story out there. Some filmmakers try to stretch things out and over-explain, or in some cases, they under-explain. You know, give us a little bit of information, but don't bore us with every little detail. And I think that's why the film still holds up so well, because there's a little bit of mystery to it, but at the same time, there's not too much to overwhelm you. You know, it's like, we know that they're dangerous because of what they do in the film. Apparently, they're so dangerous that they're a threat to the universe because that's established. But we get to see firsthand how crazy these little creatures are, you know?
Yeah.
To me, the film is self-aware, and that helps with the film itself. So,
and much in the same way as you were kind of mentioning, it doesn't try to overdo it. It doesn't try to over-explain. I think that's, again, another strength that works for it and for so many others sometimes. Case in point, we'll go back to Cocaine Bear for a second. I think that's another part of that film that just works for it, is it doesn't overstay its welcome. We're talking a lean 90-minute film that does everything it needs to do, and you don't need to explain anything beyond a bear eating cocaine. You know, it doesn't. We don't need to get into the, well, this can't happen, and well, scientifically, this, all that shit. There's never once that discussion about what really would happen and why is this happening to it doesn't even come up. Same with this. They don't try to over-explain. They're just like, here's all you need to know, and sometimes that's just the best way to do it. So I don't know. I really recommend this film if you have not seen it. And if it's hard for me sometimes to think, how could you not have seen this film? But I forget. I am old sometimes. So I forget these things, that sometimes movies I grew up with are not in the public conscious, so they don't think about them like I do. So I have to keep that in mind sometimes. So highly recommend part 1 for sure. Now, can we recommend all the rest? Let's find out. Critters 2, when I heard about this film, like obviously the spoilers, not that it's a big spoiler because you know there's sequels, but the first film does set up a sequel. There's like an egg that was left behind or whatever, and Grover's Bend, that's the name of the damn town. See, all I had to do was just look on a different page. And I feel like they did an admirable job trying to follow through with the same vibe as the original. And funny enough, comparatively to the original, you have a different set of, I hate to use the word, I don't want to use that word, people who have worked in horror and sci-fi and have done solid takes on horror and sci-fi. So Critters 2 was directed by Mick Garris, who people may know, who wrote Batteries Not Included, The Fly Part 2. I think he even wrote Hocus Pocus, surprisingly. And he directed I know he's directed some stuff. Hang on, just bear with me. He did direct this film, but he also directed he directed an episode of Freddy's Nightmares. He did Psycho 4, Sleepwalkers, some episodes of Tales from the Crypt, The Stand. So, you know,
he has the
Bag
resume.
of Bones. He has the resume. He's been in the business. Co-writing this, and I never can say this guy's name right. I can't even say the word sentence that I'm trying to say it because I'm looking at his David Twohy. That's what it looks like to me. I'm sure I'm butchering the name, I'm sure. But he's the guy that wrote and directed Pitch Black and that whole series.
Okay.
So he's got the sci-fi pedigree behind this. So, but this is prior to that, obviously. So Critters 2 picks up a few years after the fact. I remember seeing a trailer for it and I flipped out. Like, I was like, oh, they're finally doing it. Because again, think about this. I'm a child, and sequels and things like this were or we didn't know about this shit until it happened. Like, until we saw a trailer, it was just like, oh, they're actually making it? We didn't get all the behind the scenes news like we do today.
Yeah.
So it takes a trailer for us to go, you know, and freak out. So obviously I'm watching a VHS tape. This happens to be on there, and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't wait. And then I share it with my cousins because they were the ones that showed me. So I thought I was going to one-up them and just be like, look what I found, a trailer for this movie. And they were like, yeah, we saw it. And I was like, well, screw you guys. But I was excited nonetheless. And we see a return of Scott Grimes is back as Brad. Terrence Mann comes back as Ugg. Charlie back as, or Don Oppers, excuse me, is back as Charlie. But he's actually, he got to be a bounty hunter. So he's actually a bounty hunter. He's not the backup bounty hunter as it was, or as it was decided, like they took on Charlie's face in the last film. And then, of course, in this one, he gets to be him. You know, he's not just a bounty hunter. And I think the other's bounty hunter's name was Lee, which seems so un-bounty hunter-y. Like, it feels like it should be more alien than Lee, but we'll go with it. It takes place at Easter, which leads to some craziness where the egg gets mixed in with some Easter eggs and shit. So it's wild. I don't know how the egg slips out, but apparently there are more. And then someone finds them, collects them for Easter eggs, and then, you know, chaos ensues. So it, in some ways, kind of hits similar beats to the original, and you're just like, oh, okay. And you kind of see them retreading similar ground, but there is a little bit extra critter chaos because they actually get into the town and they cause more chaos and a ruckus.
Yeah.
So if you were looking for more critter carnage in a larger scale, this does deliver. But again, it does kind of retread similar ground. And they do kind of tweak it a little bit, add some interesting aspects to it, like where Lee, the bounty hunter, whose name just does not fit, cannot seem to settle on a face, unlike Ugg, who seems to love the Johnny Steele face. And obviously Charlie doesn't have to worry about that, so it becomes like a running gag where you see Lee swapping faces here and there. And the one we get stuck with the most, which, you know, I wasn't too heartbroken over, was the Playboy Playmate, whose name I can't remember. I'm sure I could look her name up, but we're not going to do that. So we got, you know, PG-13 movie and we got boobs, and it was like, all right. And so that's worth a watch right there. I'm sure you could just look it up on the internet today, but still, you know, why not? But it was a fun gag throughout the movie, is watching Lee swap faces, because she goes from, oh, you know what, I'm going to call them a they, because they swap genders and identities so fluidly. We'll say they. So they go from a Playboy Playmate to Eddie Deason. If you don't know who that is, look him up. And then I felt like, I know they could have done this, and I still feel like they should have followed through. But again, for the sake of a joke, I get it that they could have stopped him or stopped them. But he was going to change into Freddy at one point, and I really wish they'd have followed through. You know, again, I know it was for the sake of a joke, but still, it was just like, man, you took it away. Damn it.
That'd have been epic.
Still, it would have been epic. It would have been funny, and they could have easily gotten, you know, Robert Englund in for a cameo just to be in the suit.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. That would have been hilarious. And it could have just been like, holy shit, what have you done? And it's like, what? I mean, I don't know. It could have ruined the brand for the character or something. I don't know. But still, I think it would have been hilarious. But again, the joke itself was pretty funny too. But I like this movie because I feel like it still kind of retains the theme and the elements of the original while trying to take it in a new direction, trying to add some stuff to it. But then there are other elements to it that just, I don't know, something about it feels a little off, and it just doesn't quite live up to the first. So yeah. I would still recommend it as a fun follow-up watch, but I don't think I could say that it's better than the original. You know what I mean? Interesting concept, especially the large ball that they make at the end. I thought that was like an awesome idea, is that the critters or the krites all kind of come together and create this gigantic critter ball.
It's funny because the cover that I happened when I Googled, because I wanted to look up some stuff. That's the very first thing that pops up as the cover. It's the big ball of all of them together.
And that's absolutely one of my all-time favorite covers for a movie, is that right there. It sells it. Like you don't need anything else. You just look at that and it's like, okay, sold. I got it. So what are your thoughts on this one?
Honestly, I'm kind of with you in the sense of nothing catches the magic of the first film.
Mm-hmm.
I will give this one props for the simple fact that I feel like it does come the closest.
Yeah.
And I think it was because it was still fresh in everyone's mind as far as, we're coming directly from that first film. It's still a big part of who we are as an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so jumping into this and then making the tweaks that they made, I don't think it hurt the film. I think it made a lot of people step back for a minute and kind of go, huh, and really think about the critters as a whole, I think.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think adding comedy into any horror film turns into a dangerous thing. Because I think sometimes they start to rely on it too much. This is before it got to the point where it was really, funny, but they did have those like little jokes. And I think that's okay, but I think when they realize that those, a lot of directors and writers, they go, man, people are really enjoying the jokes. They're enjoying that it's getting funny. And then it turns into more of a comedy. And sometimes that works, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it does work, Evil Dead's a perfect example. Army of Darkness, more of a comedy.
Yeah.
But it works. And shots ready here. Even Nightmare on Elm Street, it began to turn into more of a comedy thing. You had all the one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
I love Nightmare on Elm Street, but I don't know if that necessarily works. Because in Freddy's Dead, it was like, well, we're going to go full-fledged comedy. Don't get me wrong. They knew that Freddy's Dead was probably going to be the last film because of all of the editing and all of the crap that they did with the previous film that made the previous film not do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they made Freddy into like this Bugs Bunny type character for Freddy's Dead. And then, of course, Wes Craven came back and yet again proved that he is the one that knows Freddy.
Yeah.
But I think Critters 2 was good in the sense that it still had a lot of the key elements of the first one, and it did put in a little bit of the comedy aspect, and I think that they did it the right way. So I think they did balance it out well. And I think comparatively to the other films after the first film, 1 and 2 would probably be the two that I would be like, if you're not going to watch any of the other ones, at least watch these two.
Sure.
So that's how I feel on it.
Fun fact, two little trivia bits I thought would be worth bringing up. 1, Critters 2 is the only horror film under the Playboy Enterprises title. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either. That's interesting.
There you go. And also, which critics don't, this is one of the reasons not to trust critics over fans. This film is included on the film critic Roger Ebert's most hated list. Don't know why. There are worse Critters movies, and we're going to talk about them. Oh, and Dee Wallace, we were sitting there talking about her. We completely forgot to mention probably one of her more famous roles, Cujo, in horror.
Yeah.
Went right over my head. I forgot all about that. Critters 3. So this one, if anyone knows this for any reason whatsoever, it is because Leonardo DiCaprio is in it as a young lad. I think this is one of his earliest films.
That's what I was thinking of earlier.
Mm-hmm.
One of the bigger actors that got a start, or one of their first films. So go ahead, sorry.
So yeah, this is definitely his, I'm almost positive this is his feature film debut. And the idea is they kind of try to take it their own way, but they don't want to, it's like they're hanging on to light threads. The light thread is Charlie. Everything else, it's like they just said, screw it. Let's do something completely different. So what this does for me is it raises questions, okay? So after part 2, we're under the assumption that they got all the critters and critters, doesn't matter, you know what I mean. And then they're wiped off. But in this, we never see any Krites show up. They're already in or on Earth. And they've somehow migrated out to Los Angeles. So it also begs the question, where the hell was Grover's Bend? Because maybe it was a small podunk town out in California. I don't know. But we're just speculating at this point. So if it's all the way out in Los Angeles, or if it was out in California in the first place, then their migration out that way was not that far-fetched. But if it was much farther, that again raises questions. How the fuck did they move out that way? And then I guess the only logical question at that point would be, or a logical plot point, is that Charlie had been following them, because clearly he's aware they're there. So he is following them, and they wind up in, I can't remember how they get there. I don't know if someone found an egg. It's been a while since I've watched this, or I don't retain it all that well. But somehow they get into an apartment building, and that's where their chaos ensues. They kind of traumatize and attack all these people in this apartment complex. Clever idea, okay? In the sense that you're doing, what would the term here be? Like self-contained horror.
Yeah.
Like you put the horror in a building, which, I mean, this has been done before. So it's that kind of concept where you're like, okay, well, the terror is inside the building, no one can get out, and you're kind of dealing with it. So it was a great idea, but I feel like budgetary constraints limited what they could do. They didn't have a lot of people to work with, so it just felt kind of, I don't know, lacking. Interesting concept, interesting idea. Great to see Charlie again. And it's not I wouldn't consider it a bad watch. It's just kind of like, you're not going to be super duper excited about it. You know what I mean? Like, you'll be entertained from time to time, but overall, it's just kind of like, it's kind of nice to see the critters again. Kind of like most part 3s can be sometimes. You're just like, it was kind of nice to revisit this, but I could do without it.
It's like you didn't love it, but you didn't hate it. You're just like, it's
right.
just there.
And granted, it's a low mark on the IMDb scale. Like, it's got a... But I wouldn't consider it that bad. I mean, even the other two have a lower score than I would give them, but that's just my opinion. So it's, like I said, it's an interesting watch just to kind of see the idea put into a different scenario. Obviously, seeing Leonardo DiCaprio, some of the other actors in the film, Charlie, Don Opry still brings it, and also to kind of point this out, because I'm almost positive this is a fact, because I don't see anything telling me otherwise, is that this was an actual, this is one of those straight-to-video movies. So it didn't go to theaters like the others, so that may have had something to do with its production. I mean, there really aren't problems. It's just, the cheapness of it. I hate to kind of call it out like that, but that's what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, that's exactly what it is,
Yeah. And we've heard these stories before when it comes to these extravagant productions, and you're probably saying, this is extravagant? Well, when you consider that this and Critters 4 were shot back to back, someone had an idea, and I feel like if you could have combined those two ideas, you may have had a much better movie. Yeah. Maybe 1 hour of this and 1 hour of that. Granted, it would have been a longer, beefier movie, but I feel like you would have cut out all the BS that you were trying to cram into a 90-minute movie. Because you think about it, you got 2 90-minute movies, so a 3-hour epic if you're counting. But if you remove some of the fat, trim them both down to an hour, and then combine them into a 2-hour movie, probably would have worked a lot better. Because both ideas, both stories feel like they're lacking something. So I'll go ahead and bounce into Critters 4 while we're here. Unless you've got something to say about Critters 3 specifically.
No, go ahead. I've got mine for the end here, what I'm going to say.
Okay. So the end of Critters 3, they actually do kind of like mid-credit stuff. So as the credits are rolling, you see Charlie digging for some remaining eggs in the building in the basement. And then he gets a message from Ugg telling him that they're going to send like a vessel or container or something like that. So he's to put the eggs in that, and then they'll pick them up. And then they pretty much leave it with a to be continued right there. So you're like, oh shit, so there's going to be a part 4. Can't wait. So luckily, at least they paid that off, because I've seen that happen before where they set up and be like, to be continued, and then we never get a continuation. It's like, this is the biggest bullshit I've ever seen. So at least they planned it, they were aware, and they didn't just set up something they weren't going to deliver. But then part 4 goes in a direction I did not expect, because we actually go into the future, and the eggs go with Charlie. How he gets, I can't remember, it was like the vessel gets lost or something like that. I don't remember. It was something interesting, but I know that it was in the future. by the time Charlie awoke from his cryo freeze, because he got sucked into it as well. And then the movie doesn't really seem to know what it wants to do, because we get corporate espionage, and then some people are wanting to buy the, like, capture the creatures, and they're going to sell them for money, and then they want to use them. It kind of does that alien thing, like an Alien Resurrection, where it's like, well, we're going to use them for research, and oh, they're so fascinating, but we understand they're deadly creatures. That whole trope. And it's a shame that it doesn't really work, because one, we don't really get a lot of critter action. It's almost like their budget was really constrained, and they only have like 2 puppets they could use, because we really don't see all that much. So the critter action is very light.
Yeah.
You had a great cast. That was the other thing about this film that just feels like it's such a letdown, is you had actors like Angela Bassett, Brad Dourif, Anders Hove, who people might actually know best for Radu in Subspecies, the Full Moon franchise, which they're coming out with a part 5 for that, and he's coming back for it. So can't wait to see that. But it had a fantastic cast, and it really should have paid off, but it's not bad. It's just dull, like there's no substance to it, and it just feels like you're just meandering for 90 minutes. And it's like, I don't really know where we're going with this. And so that's just how it felt to me. I just felt like there was nothing of substance. So they were just trying to pad it for time, and there was really nothing that interesting about it. So the movie just kind of comes off like this 90-minute slog, and it's one I really can't recommend. Unless you're just a completist and you just have to watch all of them, you can skip this one easy. And like I even said, Ugg does a complete heel turn that makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like, suddenly he's become this counselor who wants, like, he's become the very thing that he was absolutely the opposite of who he was. And now, unless he's playing a different character, but this seems like the same actor, same guy, and it just doesn't add up. So why would you do that? And I don't know. It's just, I cannot recommend this movie to anybody. It's, again, unless you're a completist and you just have to watch it, you can skip it. What are your thoughts on both, for that matter?
Honestly, when it comes to Critters 3 and Critters 4, Critters 3 I can watch. Doesn't really bug me any. I'm kind of in that same boat of I don't love it, but I don't hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly remember nothing of Critters 4.
For good reason.
Yeah. To be completely honest, I remember nothing. The last time that Critters actually, which is something I was going to get into just real quick here, the last time I watched anything with Critters, they had done a web series of Critters. It was only like 8 episodes. But they did do another Critters movie back in 2019. I don't know if you know that or not.
Critters Attack, I think, right? Or is that the other one?
Nope, Critters Attack. That's correct. Yeah. And Dee Wallace came back for it.
But not as the same character.
No.
That's the weird part. I've
noticed that they do that in a lot of films now. They're bringing characters back, but not as... Well, they're bringing actors back, but not as their same characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like for just little cameos that are weird. It got a really low rating. I don't remember watching it, to tell you the truth. I think I had seen clips of it on TV.
Yeah.
The critters look cool in it, and it looks like, to me, it looks like a movie that a bunch of teenagers would watch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I heard when both of those projects came out, it was Critters Attack and then A New Binge. I was excited initially because I thought, oh, cool, we're actually getting some new stuff. And I did not hear good things about either of the projects. So yeah. I just avoided them because I didn't want that. I didn't want that stain.
The only thing that I thought was interesting about, I believe it was Critters Attacks, they introduced a critter that wasn't evil.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about that. Like a little, I don't know, negative looking, like it was white colored or something.
He was white with a black stripe on him. He was almost like, it was almost like a Gremlin's reverse. Like, you know, the cute little Gremlin Gizmo, he's furry and he's cute, and then the evil ones are like dark and gross looking. It was like the opposite. Like most of them are evil and, you know, look this way. I guess he was the only thing about it that, like, the reviews said was an interesting thing. So it's one of those things. I honestly feel like the franchise, they would either have to reboot it or do some kind of legacy sequel to it for it to successfully come back into the mainstream.
Sure. I don't know which I would prefer, though. I think if you could rope the original cast back in for a legacy sequel, then maybe. But even to that effect, I don't really know what good that might do. So I at this point, I think I would actually be okay with just a complete overhaul, a complete reboot, and really understand. You have to find people who understand what the franchise is. Now, if you wanted to go, I know with Critters Attack, they went for a hard R this time around, which, again, was a first for the franchise. If you wanted to do that, great. I'm all for it. But you need to establish the rules: comedy, sci-fi, horror, and you have to balance all three properly.
Yeah.
And even that was another thing that they did so well in the original, is it almost seemed like two separate films at some point, but in the best possible way. Much like Richard Donner did with Superman, is when you see the space stuff, you feel like this does not fit in the small town stuff. But that's kind of the point. It shouldn't. But this is that story here, and there's another story down here. So you have to make sure that you have different elements, different themes and feels to the atmosphere in which you're trying to describe at that point. Because Prison Planet, I don't want to think of small town on Earth when I'm looking at a sci-fi prison planet sitting on some floating rock. It just doesn't make sense. So you hone in on that aesthetic because it just doesn't feel like it should work. But it does, because that's what you're doing. You set the goal there. There's no comedy there. It's almost like terror, sci-fi, alien almost.
And I go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it just feels like they haven't quite. I guess the people who've been doing these new sequels, or whatever the hell you want to call them, reboots, or even like the last two, they didn't. I mean, even with Charlie involved, it just feels so upsetting that it just didn't have some substance to it like the first one did. Because and maybe that's why they didn't suck as bad, because Don Opper was involved, because he was trying to steer the ship, but there wasn't enough content. So reestablish these characters, reestablish the rules that you're laying out, and don't teeter to one side. You need an Elizabeth Banks to pull off this. You need someone who understands how to balance the comedy and the horror, because the horror is part of it. Yeah. It's not just a straight comedy. Shit gets real at some point. We didn't even talk about their means of attack. They roll into little balls, and they can shoot darts out of their head, or like little needles that practically paralyze you. I mean, that's terrifying if you think about it, because all you are, you're a sitting duck waiting to be eaten.
Yeah, and they've got a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth.
So it's a fascinating design, and I want more of that.
Now, to take it in a 180 just real quick, I know we're coming up. Wow, we're just under 2 hours. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it would be interesting too to maybe pay homage to the original films, but maybe tell a different story with different people, because who's to say that a critter egg didn't end up in another town somewhere?
Sure.
I think that would be an interesting concept. Somebody else would have a whole new experience with it, and you'd follow a whole new set of characters. I think that's what they were trying to make the web series into, was it was going to turn into the critters were spanning out all over, and it was showing different stories from different places. I think that would be interesting as well. But yeah, as far as the franchise goes, I think, like you said, bring back the original characters if you can, do it that way, or just do a complete overhaul and just start fresh. So
yeah, but you have to have the right people involved to lay that tone, because the moment you do something, I honestly, again, that's where I think about Attack and A New Binge, whatever they were doing, they went to comedic, they went to outlandish with the concept, not understanding what you were trying to do. And the balance of it all is what's key to this whole thing. And we got to find the right people behind the camera to do it right, because the whole hokey jokey bullshit. I think that's another thing that's kind of bugging me with certain movies, because I was even listening to a podcast this week, and I think I'm tired of that too, is where everything is just like self-referential, ha ha ha, wink wink, nod nod. You see what we're doing? We're doing this thing. Yeah, I got it. Okay, why can't we just tell an actual joke? Because for some reason they think everything's got to be a joke about a thing that we're all aware of, and it's like, ah ha 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 ha, got it. Don't need you to point that out. I want something a little bit more genuine. I felt like I got that with Cocaine Bear, you know?
Yeah.
There didn't seem to be any moments where they were just like, It's like, no, okay. Everything felt like it was genuine comedy in the moment, not some self-referential bullshit.
It is what it is. Just keep it simple.
Yeah. Put in your comedy where you need to, and keep it horror. Keep it sci-fi.
Yep.
All these elements. It seems like an easy premise to play off of. And that's why I would even say, if you do a reboot, just restart from scratch. Keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Stick with the basics. Kreitz escaped, come to Earth, small town. Change it up. It doesn't even have to be Grover's Bend. It could be anywhere in the world. If you can think of somewhere that it might be even more interesting for them to explore. I would maybe even add in just a tiny little wrinkle, is understanding their breeding patterns, because something lays eggs. There's eggs all over the place. So maybe explain that one little detail, because that's something that actually kind of came to mind. It was like, they lay a lot of eggs, but who's doing the egg laying, and how does their breeding process work? You know, are they just asexual breeders, and after they eat enough, they're just like plop 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 plop, whatever? I don't know. I don't understand how it works. Explain that one little detail. Don't go overboard. Keep it simple, and then there you go.
Yeah.
I think it would be a fantastic idea, and it would be a return to form if you get the right people involved. Damn it, who owns this franchise now? That's what I want to know.
We need to do this.
Yeah, we do. Because clearly some people just don't understand how this works. And maybe I should watch Critters Attack to see if it's as bad as they say, but there's just something about it. When I watched the trailer, I could already get this sense of, ha ha ha, look at what we're doing, ah, ha ha ha. Like they're just overthinking it, and it's like, I don't need you to just point shit out.
Yeah.
You know, tell a genuine story, show me a genuine movie. That's all I'm asking. Anyway, that's all I got to say about Critters.
Well, I have really nothing else to add. Like I said, I'm really needing to rewatch my Critters. I remember enjoying them as a kid. I remember them being fun, scary, and, all around just interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's just one of those franchises. If the audience hasn't watched it, go watch it. Even watch the ones that we're saying aren't good. Maybe you love them. Maybe we hate, maybe you love the ones we hate.
In fact, I would love to hear if there's an audience member out there that is like shocked by our take, or saying that we've heard Critters Attack and the new binge suck. Tell us why all those opinions are wrong and why we think we might actually like it. Because again, I'm admitting point blank, I have not seen it because all I've heard is bad things.
Yeah.
And since I have not heard anything positive, I'm just like, I'll just dodge that bullet altogether, and that be that, because I just don't want to waste my time.
And I have an idea for a poll for you to do this week if you want.
Okay.
You could do reboot or sequel to Critters.
There we go.
What people might think. Because that'd be an interesting one to see. But yeah, I have nothing else to add. If you want to tell the people where to find us, or if you have anything else to add before then. So.
Nope, got nothing. So yeah, huge fan of the Critters franchise. Want to see it survive. Would love to see it revived, much like some other franchises that we've had. But if it doesn't happen, still got the first two that I can always come back to, and I do enjoy. So Ramblers, have you watched Critters? Are you familiar with the franchise? Let us know how you feel about Critters on Twitter at horrorramblings. If you want to tell us in a long email, you can do that at horrorramblings@gmail.com. I will definitely put up that poll. Which would you like to see? Complete reboot or legacy sequel in the poll, so keep your eyes open for that. If you want to discuss horror with like-minded individuals, join our Facebook group or join us in our Ramblers room on Discord. You can even find us on Instagram to see an assortment of horror images, which I didn't post anything this week. Damn it, should have. Sorry. But if you're feeling, anyway, you can go to, we pointed everyone to Jay Crimson last week. Go check out his Instagram. He's got an Instagram with a bunch of interesting pictures over there. Shouting him out again. If you're feeling generous and just want to support the show, then head on over to patreon.com/pencil and paper productions. Chuck in a buck and help the show grow. In fact, if you're not really enticed by anything, maybe tell us in that email, what would entice you to chuck in a buck? What can I do to help you feel like that if you're helping support this show, what can we give back to you? That's my biggest problem with Patreon is I don't really know. Do you want merchandise? Do you want stickers? What do you want? If we can figure it out, we'll do it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Leave a review on your favorite podcasting app, whether it be Spotify and Apple or whatever. And Spotify, I've found Anchor is now no longer Anchor. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
It's now Spotify for podcasters. And I was like, what are you doing? Everything's gone. Okay. So luckily they haven't changed everything yet, but they're working on it for some weird, strange reason. But anyway, you can still do all the polls and everything over there. Tell your friends that they can find us on their favorite podcasting app. Like I said, you're using Spotify, look at our questions and polls. And finally, if you want a central hub, keep up with any and all things at pencilpaperproductions.com/horror-ramblings. Links are in the show notes for your convenience.
And remember, guys, stay spooky out there.
This has been the Horror Ramblings podcast. Join us next time for even
This has been a Pencil and Paper Podcast Network production.